Okay. Okay. The camera might be off, but this is the best I could do. I'm also filming on my phone. So, to introduce real quickly, today I'm going to be talking about The Stone of Tears, Book 2 in the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. So, to preface my review really quickly, it's been a few years since I read the first book. I believe I originally posted maybe 2018, 2019, around there. Definitely before COVID. I'm not sure how long ago it was because I haven't gone back to look at the review or anything like that. I'm sure my opinions have changed. I'm not exactly sure what I said the first time, although it probably wasn't very informative as far as what I actually thought of the book. However, I decided to make this video now, 3 years later, I don't know, because I just started reading book 2 in November. And as of right now, we're in April 2022. I started the book in November 2021. And what I did, very interesting, what I did was I started to read, well, one, I got a new job and, whatever. But on my lunch break, I told myself that I would read one chapter a day or every lunch break that I had, right? So every day that I had my lunch break, I would try to at least read a chapter. Of course, sometimes I would read nothing because I was busy, or other times I would have a little extra time and I'd read maybe 2 or 3 chapters during my lunch break. But point is, pretty consistently, at least, average 3-4 times a week, I would read from the book. And I finished reading actually April 1st. It was on a Friday. So from November 2021 to April 1st or March 31st, 2022, I read the book. Anyways, I've already started actually reading Blood of the Fold, which is book 3. So far I hate it, but I have many opinions on book 2, which is why I wanted to make this video today. I really thought about not making a video because I don't remember my first being very informative or anything like that, but I've changed within the past couple of years, and my view on what I find entertaining has also changed. But actually, I didn't annotate anything because I wasn't planning on making a review, but as I finished, when I finished and I started reading Blood of the Fold, I realized what I liked. So from what I could remember, I wrote it all down, and I have this paper right here. I'm going to be covering maybe more or less 3 major things from book 2, which is 1, things that I liked, 2, things that I don't like, and 3, stuff that didn't make sense to me, which doesn't necessarily mean that I liked or didn't like it. It just didn't make sense to me. And I couldn't figure out what the purpose it was, what purpose it had as far as the plot. So, first thing, okay, yeah, starting the book, I wasn't, I think I mentioned this in my first review in the first book. I thought the ending happened way too quickly. And I figured when book 2 started, they would obviously have to continue the scene from everything that happened at the end of book 1, which they did in book 2. But then they introduced all of these. Well, I mean, obviously everything tied together in the end, which kind of was cool. But I felt like one, and I have the same note or review or complaint in this book too as well. I thought the beginning was like very heavy and inquisitive, I guess, as far as opening up storylines and plots and stuff like that. But I thought the way they wrapped up the battle at the People's Palace in Dahara and then continued it into book 2 with, like, I don't know, the Banelings and the Keeper's Minions, and, like, adding that element to the story as, like, branching off to make, more characters, etc., whatever. I thought them in doing that was also done like very hastily, and it didn't really make sense to me, only because one, the book is called Stone of Tears, and obviously they introduced it within the first chapter, first two chapters. One, I had no idea, although we could probably deduce that much, that, you know, that's probably what it was, what the lady was carrying. But this brings up my first thing that I thought didn't make sense. One, that whole, the lady in general, she just did not make sense to me. Like her character, her purpose, her power for some reason. How did she get that stone? Because she could have only had it, she could have only gotten it during this rift battle thing with the tear, the veil, all of that stuff that they did with the books of Orden that teared the veil, and you know, all of that stuff. But she said that she's had it, what was it, like passed down, she's had it for this long, blah 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 blah. Way later in the book, when Richard is in the old world, at the palace of the prophet, something like that, with the Sisters of the Light, they explain through the prophecies that the Stone of Tears is essentially a key, one of many keys that keeps the keeper in the underworld, which means that it belongs there, but somehow it was always at the surface with that lady, it passed down from her grandma, apparently. All that BS, which of course there's that one conflict, but which would also mean that she's some sort of like agent of the creator in the underworld. I don't know. It's just, that's just one thing, one of many. No, not one of many. Just, you know, I had maybe three major complaints. That's definitely one of them. That kept me confused throughout the whole story. So keep that in mind, because I'm gonna bring it up later when we get to the end of the book. But that was one of my major issues, and also like I already forgot her name, but like Chase and that adopted daughter, like they were not very. I saw her importance in the first book, second book. They were not necessary to be kept, because it didn't make sense that they somehow also ended up in the old world by like instruction from, I can't remember, it was like some sort of town. Oh no, they met the army, they ran into the army, the child army in the mountains, and then, oh no, it was mud people. Okay, speaking of mud people, okay, I know I'm trailing off, but that's kind of where I'm going. I felt like when I first started reading, after, you know, the events of the People's Palace in Dahara, and everyone kind of split, and then Richard and Kaelin ended up back with the Mud People. When I was first reading, I felt like that was at least 2/3 of the book, like them being only with the Mud People, just staying there, going to the forest, you know, like weird shit, talking to people. I'm not gonna pronounce the names of the characters, the Mud People name, because I don't want to be stupid if I pronounce it wrong. So I'm not gonna mention anyone's names. Not that I remember, because one, I don't have the book with me right now. All I have written is my thoughts, which I didn't write any names. But I thought that was so boring and so unnecessary to spend so much time with the Mud People doing literally absolutely nothing. But literally, as soon as I started thinking how boring the book was when I was reading, it started to like get emotional, if you know what I mean. So if you read the book, you know what I'm saying. Like, this is kind of like the first time where they really like dive deep into like their love and like how they feel about each other and how happy they are and how much they really, really like each other, which I thought was like, I thought it was like so good. And I realize now that it was necessary to go through all of that with Richard and Kaelin specifically, because one, we hadn't had that yet, and two, it perfectly led into the Sisters of the Light coming to get him. So let's see. Oh yeah, oh my god. So one, I don't know how many times I cried while reading this book, and it's not like heavily, it's not like emotionally bearing to read the book or anything like that, but I thought, I don't know if it's just me or, you know, how involved I am with the books, because I had mentioned, although I'm just starting to read the books now, I'm a diehard fan of the show, and I thought the show was so good prior to reading the books, obviously. First of all, okay, stop. Before I continue, book two was like light years better than book one and book three so far, because I already said I don't like book three yet. I'm about like 1/5 of the way in. I hate book three. Anyways, stop. I keep getting sidetracked, and it says 10 minutes, and I haven't really talked about anything. So, Sisters of the Dark, when they arrived, I was like, okay, what is this BS? Excuse me, Sisters of the Light. I remembered vaguely from the show what their purpose was and like what was happening, but I had no idea. Well, I did and I didn't, because they were like hinting at Sisters of the Dark. They were doing like that flashback scenes, which I didn't know they were flashbacks. I thought it was all like on a single timeline. No, it was like what, 20 years prior, then 20 years later, and then like 20 years later being the events that are happening in the book, right? And we're just getting flashbacks, which I didn't know, which I thought was very confusing, because it was very hard to follow names and events when they weren't like happening or didn't really pertain until like you couldn't really connect it until like way later in the book, which is kind of like, oh, okay, that's, that's awesome, like now I understand. But Sisters of the Light, they had already alluded to the fact that there were Sisters of the Dark, and they had already alluded that when they got there, Sisters of the Dark were with amongst the three. And we don't realize till later when Prelate Anna is talking to, I think, Verna or Richard, that she had sent two Sisters of the Dark and one Sister of the Light to fetch Richard. And obviously, part of the process, you kill, absorb their power, blah, 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 with that knife, and then you become power. And she just kind of gambled on the fact that, well, she didn't gamble. She was almost fully certain that Verna was, loyal to the creator. She just wasn't sure, I guess, of the other two, where they fell. Now we know that they were Sisters of the Dark. Actually, that wasn't confirmed. But point being, why I brought this up, I 100% thought that Sister Verna was a Sister of the Dark, because she was like so vague in the beginning. She was like very, like monotone, very serious, strict orders, this. And then while they had introduced, or while like Verna was, communicating the needs of the Palace of the Prophets and the Sisters of the Light, and explaining their purpose and all of that, they were also subsequently like speaking about or alluding to the fact that they're Sisters of the Dark here, and this is what we're doing. We're stealing the essence from the young wizards, which now, of course, 1,000% makes sense that they were actually breeding them on purpose to like absorb their power and do all of this experiments, whatever. Because they're supposed to be rare, right? Far few in between. And it's like, why did they even search out for Richard if they already have their own, human plantation and, all of that stuff? Well, that was all done specifically to serve the Sisters of the Dark so they can build their power, which I guess Prelate Anna did not realize, because this must have been happening for a really long time, which she might have at one point, which was what the 20 years prior, when she left with Nathan Raw. Oh my God, 1,000 years old. I don't know where that falls in the timeline, but I thought that was like super interesting. But unfortunately, we're probably not gonna get. Well, we might. I mean, listen, I'm on book 3 of Blood in the Fold. I'm about, I think, maybe 200 pages in. We've had maybe 2 minutes of the aftermath of the Palace of the Prophets and what they're doing, and now, Sister Verna is Prelate, but oops, spoiler alert. But I think I'm talking way too much about nothing. But yeah, to summarize, I thought Sister Verna was Sister of the Dark and that Richard was gonna be screwed. But then we find out that Sister Verna was just naive and Anna was playing her, rightfully so she could bring Richard in. Not that it was necessary to train him, because she knew about the wizards out in the Midlands and whatever. She already knew about that. The only purpose to bring Richard here is to annihilate the Sisters of the Dark, right? More or less, that was the reason, because I think she admitted herself that it wasn't really necessary. But yeah. Problems in the book. Valley of the Lost. Okay. Specifically, the towers, the Valley of the Lost kind of makes sense. Now they're adding on a whole other purpose in this book 3 of why it existed and all that BS. I thought it was explained pretty well, the purpose of the Valley of the Lost, more or less, like, power-hungry wizards, this, and this. Now we know where wizard sand comes from, the white sand, the black sand, although if it's, like, so readily accessible. First of all, when they were first talking about the Valley of the Lost, they must have mentioned around 6 or 7 towers, right? I'm not crazy about that. I'm not going to go back and double check because that's so lame. But I'm almost certain they spoke, excuse me, I'm almost certain that they mentioned around 6, 7 towers, definitely more than 2. My problem with this specifically is at the very end where they're not called wild people. Shit, I should have memorized at least. Du Chai Lu, you know who that is, okay? That sorceress with the wishes. When apparently she has all the power in the world to absorb, I don't know, chaos magic, whatever was going on in that valley that was cursed. She had all the power in the world to go through there herself and like absorb or deflect the magic. That could have been done a long time ago. You didn't need Richard. First of all, 1. 2, they only went to 2 towers and destroyed 2 towers, which they didn't even destroy. What they described was he filled it with lightning, and then the black sand turned into white sand, and then the white sand turned into black sand, and that was it. Everything disappeared. What happened to the 7 other towers? Like, if you're supposed to do that with 7 other towers. 2, the sand is still there. 3, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm not crazy. That part didn't make any sense to me. And it's not that, I wrote Du Chai Lu on here. Yeah, switching several towers. There were. Richard and Du Chai Lu only, like, cured or destroyed literally only 2. Since we're on the subject of the towers, this is unrelated, but that's just one problem that I had with that. I'm not going to go into detail because I'm just going to ramble, but also another thing about the towers, his visions were clearly prophecies, right? So if he's a war wizard and he has this, sort of subtractive and additive magic, that means, or like according to his visions and everything else that he's going through at the Valley of the Lost, he's also a prophet, which Verna tries to tell Warren that he's a prophet only because he understands, or he's able to understand at some level what they mean. But I guess much like Nathan, which maybe he was a war wizard too, I don't effing know. But much like Nathan Raw, he's able to literally give prophecies and see them, envision them the way Richard did at the towers. So I'm already seeing that somewhere along the line in this series, that's gonna be explored more with Richard, and alongside him being a war wizard and not knowing how to use his stupid magic, he's also gonna be having prophecies. So it's gonna hopefully bring him back to the Sisters of the Light and with Verna, because I thought the 3 of them were such a good pair, or trio, excuse me. I thought the 3 of them were such a good trio. I really, really liked, okay, well, now that we're at the things that I liked, I really, really liked him and his time at the Palace of the Prophets. I know he was like all depressed. First of all, okay, now that I'm here, I like that, okay? The 3 of them were good. Hi, I'm so back and forth, I know. Okay, speaking of Palace of the Prophets. Okay, no, you know what? Stop. I'm gonna go all the way back. I was at Valley of the Lost. Okay, so ah, I'm not going in the timeline of the book. I'm just spewing what I liked and I didn't like, and I know that's annoying. So I'm gonna go back to the Mud People. Like I said, I thought that totally makes sense when the sister showed up, and I enjoyed all of that. It introduced that lightning that Kaylin also had, which was never explored. After that, she tried to do it again on her own, but she couldn't, most likely because she was exhausted. And then okay, stop. But I thought that was interesting that her lightning power, which means she's gonna bring it up later. I thought that was very interesting. They leave the Mud People and then they separate because so Kaylin and Richard, she basically gives him up and she makes him think. First of all, he's traumatized from being a Mord Sith, right? Or being trained by the Mord Sith. He's traumatized and he remembers vividly what he went through, and he's telling it to Kaylin, and she's like trying not to cry, but I think he's crying. First of all, when he said that, when I was talking about how emotional this was, not super emotional, but you know, when I was talking about how this book made me cry, when he's like recounting, and it was very brief in that chapter, it wasn't even that deep. It was like maybe like 3 pages total, but when he's like recounting that situation with like Denna, oh my god. One, I cried. And then when Kayla's all like, okay, I think I understand why you don't want the Radahan around your neck, because like it basically renders you prisoner and they can cause you pain and you don't want that. Like, oh, okay, I get that. That was like, okay, that was heartbreaking, you know, I'm not gonna lie. And then when Denna comes, or when they find out, or when they like piece together what they need to do and how they need to go on their journey, and that they have to go to Idendril. They were gonna do that and find Zed. So Richard decides, I need help from the spirits. I'm a mud person. I can count on them to provide advice like they had done before. I don't think he had requested it before. If I'm not mistaken, it was something else, and he was just a part of it because they're official mud people now. This time he's doing it. He's insisting, I'm doing the request, so I'm gonna lead it. Well, his spirit that he summons is fucking Dark and Raw. Is Dark and Raw, his dad, which, you know, are his ancestors, but not, you know, the ones that he wanted to speak to. So somehow he allows him passage to enter back into the world as a spirit, I guess. Not physically, I don't think. Point is, it opens and he's there, and he's doing I don't know what, and then he marks Kaylin with a kiss on her neck, which I still don't know what the purpose of that was. She had it when she was in that battle with the teenage army, and then it disappeared after. I can't remember when it disappeared, but it does disappear, and it doesn't really go into detail as to why she had it in the first place, other than, I'm assuming, like as a tracker. I don't know, maybe so that Dark and Raw could ensure that he was separated from Kaylin, and I don't know. That didn't really make sense to me. But I guess it was just to scare her, or just to, like, I don't know, ingrain in her brain that, you know, you can't escape me, Richard, you know, whatever. That happens, and then Richard is also marked by a handprint. She was marked with the kiss. He was marked with a handprint, which I guess would make her mark of the Keeper, because the Keeper himself didn't mark Richard on his chest. It was Dark and Raw. So I guess that she was also marked by the Keeper. I guess I didn't think of that. So they were both marked by the Keeper, and he was, I don't know what the purpose of that mark was now that I think about it. Oh yeah, that he had to have his soul go directly to the underworld. Well, that's when Denna comes back as a spirit, and she takes the mark so that she can take his place to the Keeper. But I think somehow she ends up with the Creator. I think that's what the exchange was for, right? She was gonna take Richard's place to the keeper, and that he would be fine, and he would just have the scar. And I thought that was so nice because she also cried, didn't she, in that scene, which was also very heartbreaking. I thought that was very nice. Yeah. So to continue, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I liked all of that. All of that was good. Things, mud people, yeah, they separated. Denna confessed, basically everything that she loved Richard and that she'll do this and that she needs to tell Kaylin, you need to send Richard, even though he's traumatized of what Denna did to him, what she did to him, with the collar, so that he's able to live and redo the veil, or like, whatever, all of that. So Richard has his heartbreak. Kaylin says, if you like me, you'll put on the collar, you'll be prisoner, do this. He's like, oh my god, she does not like me. She hates me. She does not like me. It's over. And he's like depressed in his entire arc at Palace of the Prophets until, he figures out how to take the collar off, because what was the contingency? It was, when you felt enough pain, right? That's once you feel enough pain and it no longer bothers you or something like that, then you've reached like the potential in your Han to be able to remove it on your own with the sister's help. Well, him and Warren figure out that it's more, pain is not subject to like physical touch, right? It's emotional pain as well. So Richard finds out that he had gone through this with Kaylin and that he finally accepts or figures out, I can't remember anymore. It's only been like a week that I finished the book, but I can't remember it anymore. Point is, he doesn't have to withstand physical pain to get it off. So him and Warren are able to get it off. Which is at the end of the book. I don't know why I'm there at the end of the book again, but after Kaylin and Richard separate from the Mud People, Caitlin sets off to go find Zed in Idendro, right? And with the three Mud People, the two boys and the warrior. And Richard is on his way with Verna, which I thought was a sister of the dark that whole period, to the Palace of the Prophets in the Old World. So on her way over there, Kaylin runs into, what does she run into? Oh, she goes to Ebenisa, right? The city of Ebenisa, and it's completely obliterated. Everyone's dead, and her sister's gone. Her half-sister, the Queen of Galia, right? Something like that. Krylia. I can't remember. Something with a C, right? Her sister, and she realizes she's gone, that she might be dead, and they go. Everyone's just gone. They set out. I believe they bury them, or they gather all the bodies. They give their respects and all of that. They're traveling. They continue to travel, and they run into this army of like teenagers that are after the Imperial Order, new villain, led by Jagang or Gajang, that guy, King Jagang, whatever, who's like some sort of, cousin to the Keeper that can also travel in dreams and, whatever. The Imperial Order, they're doing all their BS so they can eradicate magic from the Midlands. They obliterate Ebenisa, they kill everyone, they capture the Queen, and, they put her in that dungeon. They put her in that dungeon where very vivid, well, no, it wasn't that bad, but they did describe, what they did to her. That was very heavy. Speaking of heavy, I thought this book, because this did not happen in book one, they were kind of like, or Terry was like a little more descriptive in certain aspects of war and sex in the book, which I thought was interesting. unnecessary personally for my taste, but I think in the aspects of, well, as far as being involved in that little teenager war with the Imperial Order, I thought that was good. I thought that was necessary, considering everything that they had to go through, everything that Kaylin had to go through. Are you kidding me? I just wrote here warrior arc, but that's one of my favorite things. One, I hated how much time it took, book-wise, in the story, but looking back, oh my gosh, she was like amazing in that period. Her instructions to the soldiers, her leadership, her energy, like it was so good. And not, she used maybe her powers like maybe like what, once or twice out of desperation. Everything else was just like pure strategy, pure knowledge, war knowledge, everything that her dad taught her. I thought that was so good. And even though they were like teenagers and pretty young and kids, they held it down. They held it down, and from the looks of it, they did succeed more or less in their attempts to. Well, I mean, they did. I mean, they got the wizard, they got the generals. I think only one might have survived, but they accomplished what they set out to accomplish, which I thought was like awesome. That part was really good. After the war, I'm just gonna speed it up a bit. After the war, or the battle, excuse me, she goes on, she separates, oh, okay, she finds out that the two boys that, well, one, but the mud people that she was with that set off in her journey as protection, one of the little boys, I can't remember which one was, one of the little boys was a Baneling. Okay, so now that we're on Banelings, I don't remember them being discussed in the first book. I think that's such a weird name, a weird thing to call them. I don't like their purpose. I mean, I understand that the Keeper has its minions, but why are you calling it a Baneling? And why are they making it seem like their actions are unintentional? Like, basically, one of the kids was tricked by the Keeper. He was working for the Keeper this whole time, but he was tricked. He thought he was talking to his spirits, his mud people spirits, but he was talking to the Keeper, giving him very specific instruction on what to do and how to kill Kaylin. And I don't have to go into detail. You know what happened in the book, right? He kills his brother, and then Chandilan, or the general, or sergeant, lieutenant, whatever he is in his mud people status, kills him because he found out that the kid poisoned him with the weeds, or I forgot what it's called, but that poison thing, and that she was also poisoned, and that's most likely why she was unable to reach her or she didn't have the energy to use her power, whatever, all of that. That was very, that period was very intense. But things work out, of course. Where does... Okay, I feel like I'm just... Okay, it's been half an hour. I'm gonna go ahead and stop. This is too much. I thought I would do this a little more structured, because I do have very specific things here. Things I don't like and things that I like. I don't know where I went off the rails here. I'm just gonna summarize really quickly, and I'm gonna stop because I want to go to Lowe's after this. But things that I didn't like. They didn't really explain the purpose of that Stone Tears lady very well, or how. I mean, we know why she was important. They didn't really explain to her. I didn't think she made enough sense in the story to be that important. Like she just needed more explanation, is what I wanted. Two. Problems. Oh, the Lost Towers. I'm not gonna explain that again, or not the Lost Towers. The Valley of the Lost. The Towers of Perdition. There you go. I already explained what bothered me with that. 3. Darkenwall's kiss Kaylin's neck. That didn't really make sense to me, unless she was marked by the Keeper. Then that makes sense. But they didn't really explain that, which is why I'm like, teetering back and forth. Oh, I mentioned this in the beginning. Again, at the very end of the book, they're at the People's Palace in Dahara. What? Okay, the dragon thing was cool, right? But what? Are we really back here again? Dark and Raw's there again, doing some stupid thing with the wizard sand. And then everything, of course, ends in a single chapter. Like everything happens at the People's Palace in Dahara, and then the book ends. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, that's the one thing I didn't like about the first book, and it literally happened exactly the same way in the second book. When I read that, I was like, okay, I guess, whatever. I see a pattern. More than likely, book 3 is gonna end at the People's Palace in Dahara. I'm gonna bet right now $50 it's gonna end in Dahara. Same BS all over again. I didn't like that. Not that it was, I mean, it was quick. The ending was quick. I wrote that here. I don't like that the endings are rushed and they happen only at the People's Palace. That doesn't really make sense to me. If they're going there, one, they're going because he has that garden, right? The Garden of Eden, Garden of Life, and they go there because it's filled with wizard sand. Well, now we know that wizard sand is sourced at these towers, which now that they're available to everyone, everyone can pick at it, which means it seems like we're gonna have a lot of, magical problems in the Midlands, right? Well, that's what I'm thinking, especially now that the black sand is available, which that means they can practice subtractive magic without having to have subtractive capabilities, right? I'm not crazy, right? That's what's gonna be happening, right? Unless it doesn't go there. Oh, Chase and Daughter. I already said I didn't like that. They were not necessary. Kaylin's Night Lightning. It's not that I didn't like it. It's that it was never really brought up and it wasn't really explained and it wasn't really. I don't think I remember her saying that any of the other confessors had that power. But I know since she is literally the last confessor and the mother confessor, it probably works in some way where she has more power because the magic knows that she's the last of her kind and she needs to protect herself. Blah blah blah. Blah. I already know that's where that's heading. Banelings, I didn't like the Banelings. You already know that. Something that I have here that I did not mention that I didn't like. What was it? I think that was it. But yeah, I mean, I liked everything else. I mean, the timing was a little off. Oh, very minor, but the dragon had another egg, a fertilized egg. Um, she talked to Richard and she was like, "Oh yeah, my son's a teenager. He wants to meet you." And then she laid an egg. Teenage, that's and he's a boy dragon, so skip. Things that I liked. Verna, she was one of my favorite characters. I really like Warren too. The emotional bits at the Mud People with Kaylin and Richard, I really like that. Denna coming in, I really like that. Kaylin being a warrior and leading the army, I really like that. I also really liked, I didn't really talk about Zed and 80, right? The Bone Witch. I didn't really talk about them, but I like that too. I like the Prelate Anna so much. I wish she hadn't died. I thought she was gonna be a Sister of the Dark though. Yeah, book 2 was really, really good. Better than book 1, and I can already say better than book 3. I'm really disappointed in where book 3 is going because I don't like. You know what? Let me just get started. No, actually, 38 minutes. I'm not gonna be editing this, so I'm just gonna upload. I'm sorry, bye.